Hi all, I'm Al Degan, the creator and producer of the LIBI podcast. This 100% volunteer-run show was born out of the Rainforest Alberta movement and features incredible people who are leaders, innovators, and have big ideas. In this episode, I get to have another conversation with Robert Herritt to learn what's new in styrofoam recycling. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Leaders, Innovators, and Big Ideas podcast. Today I have a Where Are They Now episode back on November 2nd, 2021, episode 142. I had Robert Herritt on my podcast, and Robert is a fascinating fellow. Robert, thanks for joining me again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Al. Great to be here.
Awesome. Now, on your last episode, one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on is because I was super fascinated by the fact that you had developed a technology to recycle styrofoam. And I would say maybe 50% of the population even knows that's possible. Why don't you give us kind of an update on what happened since 2021 and where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. Certainly 2021 was during COVID. And so there were some disruptions during that time, some for the better, some for the worse or whatever. So we had to kind of rebrand as Styro Ventures. Okay. But from that launch, and this is where maybe any of your listeners that are aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs, that as long as you have a great idea and work ethic, and again, work ethic is a big part of that, there is a way to take something small and run with it far. So when we relaunched as Styro Ventures, I had basically $20,000 to start with. And we've grown that over the past couple of years from just a small start in Calgary. And anyway, here we are at the end of 2025, and we've gone national, coast to coast, and soon down into the US, but we can talk about that later.
Oh, exciting.
So yeah, so that's where we're at right now. But we finally found the on-ramp to the motorway, and we're picking up speed, and things are moving along much faster than in 2021 for sure.
Awesome. That is such an exciting story. There was some discussion we had before about what you're able to do with the styrofoam when you recycle it. And so just so you all know, Robert and I, obviously, we go way back, and Robert used to come to my house with his pickup truck and pick up my styrofoam because there was nowhere to actually bring it. And then he was working with the Alberta government and the city of Calgary and stuff, and trying to make it so that there was a way for people to recycle their styrofoam. Cochrane, Alberta had been doing it for a long time. And for some reason, the city was just like absolutely slow as molasses. And the thing that actually stuck with me that I tell everybody else, Robert, was the fact that the IT department of the city of Calgary had been recycling with you in their building for a long time, even though the city of Calgary wouldn't allow the rest of the city of Calgary to do anything with it. And I mean, I'm sure you got more to expand on that story, but since then I forget what they call it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's a service fee that people pay for recycling when they buy like a giant big screen TV or something. There's actually a recycling fee that's involved in that. And that money is supposed to be going to help with these recycling programs. And that was not happening. Could you refresh our memories on how all that played out and where we are right now?
Sure. So that's to do with EPR. Mm-hmm. It stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. Recycling is like the aviation industry. I used to be a pilot in aviation. It's all about acronyms. So there's EPS, EPE, EPP, EPR. Sure. And if I haven't lost you yet, good, let's keep going. So extended producer responsibility, all provinces have had some form of this. Alberta was the last to get on board, but Alberta seems to be of the mindset where they kind of watch everybody else and then pick and choose the best of all options and then relaunch with the gold standard. It's kind of what they did with the bottle recycling, what otherwise known as the ABCRC. And for those who don't know, I'm not involved with that, the bottle recycling at all, but it took them a while to get on board with that. But now the ABCRC is the single most efficient bottle recycling program in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, like I think number 2 is Austria or something. Nothing in North America even comes close. And so Alberta, their guidelines seem to be to get on board a little bit slowly and watch everybody else make the growing pains, and then they just take the best and they're able to rock and roll with it. And same with EPR. Extended producer responsibility, in a nutshell, is just a program where, and there's publications and things online available to go into more depth, but the short version is that EPR has been in Canada to varying degrees for quite a few years. And in BC, they've had full EPR for, I think, something like over a decade, maybe 14 years. And then other provinces had it to 50% or 60% or whatever. And Alberta has finally announced that they were launching with EPR. I think it started in January of this year was phase 1. And then phase 2, I think, was in the fall sometime. And then phase 3 will be sometime next year. And all this stuff is available on the Ministry of Environment and all the other websites to review in detail. But the short version is they did a study where they determined, and they quoted a few examples where, like a Samsung washer, for instance, Samsung, it all comes out of Korea. Everything comes to Vancouver Port. And they had 2 pricing zones. One is Western Canada, one is Eastern Canada. And they said this dishwasher, for instance, is $600. And included, and that price is the same in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and then it's $700 in Ontario and eastward. And so those are the prices fixed. And included in that price in BC is $12 to go to EPR. And they didn't have EPR in Alberta, so that washer was not $588. So that's where the government finally came on board, because they said it was clear that obviously, since virtually every other province had some form of it, and people were already paying these extra fees, then it made sense to bring in a program to capture the fees that were already paid for by the consumer. And so essentially all this money goes into a pot, and then it gets managed by an organization, an NGO here in the province. And I believe the province is finally settled on one, and you can look it up. I don't want to name them in case I'm mistaken, because everything has been quite new. But the essence is all this money from packaging goes into a pot, and then that money then goes to pay for recycling of plastics and packaging for all residential sources across the province. And in the study online, there was, and I can even send you a copy of the study if you want the link and people can look at it. It was interesting where places like Kamloops or Kelowna, when they brought in EPR, these recycle programs that previously were paid from city taxes, because it was paid for by this provincial pot of money, that I think it was Kamloops or Kelowna was able to drop their property tax by 6%. Because the money that local taxpayers were paying for cardboard recycling suddenly was shifted over to being paid for from a different source.
Right.
So that finally that pool of money is up in place. And so the government is organizing that and managing it through an NGO that is orchestrating everything. And it's being brought in phases. Cardboard and the easy stuff was phase 1 in January and so forth. Anyway, certainly the harder to recycle materials, including types of foam and that kind of thing, are hopefully coming in phase 3. So that's where we're at right now. Many municipalities, the bigger municipalities around the province, do recycle styrofoam because they've recognized how outsized of an impact it has on landfills and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, and this has been my war cry for a long time, and that is, it is a fantastic raw material that we're just discarding. And being a petrochemical producing province, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to take all the plastics that we receive, most of which comes from outside of Canada and the province, because a lot of this stuff gets shipped in from around the world. Mm-hmm. And it's not just electronics or appliances, produce and these kind of things. All of it comes shipped in some form of plastic for the most part. And certainly the further away it comes, and especially during the wintertime when temperature variations and these kind of things are integral to maintaining freshness and safety of the equipment or product or whatever, you can't get away from foams. It's still universally used. And this stuff really can be so universally recycled, some of it endlessly. Mm. And one of the big cries and things that we've been trying to push for the longest time, a belief that we had was that we can make the plastics industry in Alberta completely closed loop and ongoing recyclable program. There's no reason why we need to take virgin resin and make garbage bags and then put it in the ground. We should be able to take recycled resins that have had 2, 3, 5, 10 life cycle, and then make garbage bags or other final destination products out of it. The virgin plastics should be used to make plastics for surgical tools and other stuff where zero culpability and variation are necessary. If your garbage bag isn't 100% perfect, it's a minor detail.
Yeah, for sure.
And certainly we've been pursuing that for many years. And certainly 10 years ago when I started in this industry, the only options to recycling styrofoam or soft foam, as we call it, think like pool noodles, or if you get a new TV or printer, sometimes it has a foam cloth on it. That's like we call soft foam. And there's miles of that stuff as well. And previously, the only options for recycling that was outside of Canada. But as we've been pushing and growing the amount of material that we produce reliably, then recycling companies or companies that produce this material and that could use recycled resin have been more willing to integrate the recycled resin into their manufacturing. And so certainly there are some companies in Canada that make insulation panels that we've been able to introduce material to. So think the classic blue or green styrofoam panels for insulation. There's other companies that make different colors. Styrofoam is actually a brand name from DuPont, and it's usually the blue foam that you see in manufacturing and construction. But there's many different manufacturers and colors. And anyway, there are some manufacturers that have been shifting to using recycled content. And so we're happy to be partnering with them. The shipping it overseas certainly works great if it goes to Asia. It gets made into countertops, our tile backsplash, cabinetry, crown molding, baseboard. I guarantee probably 95% of your listeners have something at home made from it. It's so universally used in modern manufacturing. And if it goes to Europe, there's a company there we work with. They make it into the inserts for bicycle helmets.
Okay.
Or the little bits and bobs that go into baby car seats. So those are usually almost always recycled components. And with the soft foam, we've been able to work with some homegrown Canadian companies, some here in Alberta, some in Eastern Canada, and they're able to turn it into vapor barrier for new home construction, or they can add as a filler for garbage bag and other end of life cycle production, where, as I said, it would be better certainly to be able to use most or all recycled content that have had a few life cycles rather than virgin resins. So we've been working with partners to be able to introduce that and try various combinations and increase the efficacy of the out product. We're not at 100% recycled resin for garbage bags and that kind of stuff yet, but it's getting there. The technology is improving, and it is slowly but surely getting there.
That is so interesting. And I guess what I want to highlight there is that styrofoam itself, which is the white little tiny balls that are usually mashed together into some kind of form that fits your TV or your appliance perfectly, that's literally plastic. And what you're doing is you're turning it
and air
and a lot of air because it's light as heck. And you're turning that into some sort of a resin that could be reused in plastic stuff, like you typically see plastic stuff. Does it ever get turned back into styrofoam, or is that a one-way thing?
No, actually, and that's where it is endlessly recyclable. The chemical resin is called polystyrene.
Okay.
So the PS is called polystyrene, and that's why on the back you'll see number 6, and it'll say PS or EPS. But PS is the key. That's the chemical component, polystyrene. Whereas your pool noodles and these kind of things are polyethylene, so plastic number 4. And then less commonly used more in commercial applications is polypropylene. So that's the PP or EPP. The E stands for expanded, and that's just a technical term in terms of how it's produced. Also, the insulation panels, like the proverbial styrofoam insulation panels, they're actually XPS, and it stands for extruded polystyrene. So the expanded polystyrene is really hard to have much recycled content, and it's more to do with how the cells are created during the blowing and drying process and then molded and so forth. So there's limits on current technology and how applicable recycled content can be added to that. XPS, extruded polystyrene, is fantastically more useful and workable with recycled content. And so that's where we have done some trials with a Canadian manufacturer, Suprema in Quebec. And we've supplied them with a variety of different types of material for them to trial. And they've gotten it up to 85% recycled content, which is really high, above the average of the material that's available in stores right now. That's typically around the 60%. So certainly once the government decides to up the recycled content minimums, they're already there. So it's just a cost point. And XPS can be recycled over and over. And so usually when they're making insulation of various construction or wherever, there's cutoffs and pieces that are broken off or cut off to make the desired shape. And even that is something that has 85% recycled content. We can take that and then just blend it back in and recycle it over and over.
Oh, that's amazing.
So certain forms of it can be recycled over and over again. EPS is something that is usually done with minimal recycled content. Up to 30%, I think, is what they can achieve, but not much beyond that.
Right.
But that's to do with the actual manufacturing process when they actually assemble the chemical and the molecules. But we can shift it over to a different type of polystyrene, and it works quite well ongoing over and over in that form.
Right. That's so fascinating. Okay, cool. So if I caught correctly, when we first talked back in 2021, you were recycling the white light as air packing material. And now you're actually able to recycle the soft foamy stuff and the sheets of stuff that cover your TV glass and stuff like that. What other new technologies have you developed since back in 2021?
So we've certainly enhanced the machinery and the efficiency of it and that kind of thing. The other certainly expansion that we've done is just in terms of our service area, where we started in Calgary all those years ago. We expanded to BC pretty early, but then eventually we've expanded to Manitoba and Saskatchewan. And this year we finally made the big leap to Ontario and Quebec. And we actually just signed a contract with a company for 214 locations across Canada. And that'll start in the spring, and that will include the Maritimes. So we will be launching we'll have a hub in Halifax area, and then we'll service New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia as well. So we're coast to coast. And actually, we're also into the final stages of just getting our ducks in a row. And we will be launching in California in either February or March of 2026, servicing a grocery store chain in Northern California and Western Nevada.
Exciting. Congratulations, Robert. That's so cool.
It's going to be a busy year for sure. One of the other innovations that certainly has been related in conjunction to recycling, and that is it's become more and more obviously needed in the recycling industry and most industries, but certainly recycling industry, is transparency. To have real transparency and accountability for what you're doing with the material and where it goes. And so one of the big innovations, and I can't remember if I mentioned to you this back in 2021, because it was something that even from the early days, I foresaw the need. It was just to get the technology available to do it. And that is what we finally, for the past maybe 9 months, we're working on a proprietary software. We call it Styro Track. And I'm sure everybody is familiar with Uber and have used Uber. So where you can go on the app and you can see the vehicle moving towards you and that kind of a thing. Basically, we wanted to be able to give people an ironclad assurance as to where the material is when we pick it up and then what happens to it, to be able to show completely where it goes and what happens to it and how it gets recycled. Styro Track offers live tracking of the material. So when it gets picked up from a customer, they can go on the portal and they'll see the truck load up. And if it's 200 pounds or whatever of material, when we pick up, they'll see that number pop into the truck. And then as it makes its way around, it eventually gets back to the warehouse. So let's say for this customer, we picked up 200 pounds and at the warehouse, we have 12,000 pounds. So as the truck gets back to the warehouse, they'd see the total at the warehouse change from 12,000 to 12,200. Pattison Food Group is a great partner. We service all 304 locations of theirs across Canada. And so they can see the trucks rolling around in the various cities that we operate. And when we're stopping at one of their locations, they can see the truck picking up from the various locations and that kind of thing. And as it gets brought back to the warehouse, they'll see the combined total grow. When we do a shipment out, so let's say we're going to ship to one of our partners in Asia, to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, or China, that they would see it literally on the boat, the icon tracking it across the Pacific. And then when it finally lands in Shenzhen or Hong Kong or Kuala Lumpur, or depending on who we send it to, they would see their total, the 12,200 pounds, get shifted around, and they would see exactly where it goes to the factory and then what it gets actually manufactured into with pictures. So they know that their 12,200 pounds got made into white countertops and brown picture frames or whatever.
Yeah. That is such a fascinating thing. How cool that you can do that.
And again, we've had really good feedback from our clients for them to be able to see everything that goes on and what's happening to it. And of course, there's all the usual environmental reports like greenhouse gas reduction, carbon footprint reduction, landfill reduction, these kind of things. And they can go in, click up any version they want, a combination of different stores or timelines and that kind of thing, and print off any kind of customized index report they want whenever they want. So it works out really well. And so it's been hugely popular with our customers, and just part of the service that we provide it's just a value-added benefit so that our clients can see and be absolutely 100% positive and be assured that when we say it's being recycled, we can guarantee 100% of it is being recycled.
Yeah. On one hand, it's sad that you have to prove that, but on the other hand, it's good that you do, because a lot of people have conspiracy theories of how recycling actually works, and being able to prove that it's actually happening is a really big deal. So good on you for that.
For sure. And it's unfortunately, I'm sure there's been some bad players in the past, I'm sure. And we're just happy that we finally developed the technology to where people can go in and anytime, day or night, they can go see where the material is and what it got made into and that kind of thing. And years ago, I think you remember the story I told you about Save On Foods, where we tracked the material over, had a picture frame made, and then they sent me the picture frame back. And I presented that to Save On Foods at their headquarters, just to show them that the circular channels that we had done with their material. But this just shows them where it's ongoing and they can see all the time where any of their material goes and that kind of thing.
What a neat idea to be able to show them the results of their donation or their pickup. From the consumer's perspective, what does it look like right now today? And I'll be selfish and say Calgary. What does it look like today where I have a bunch of styrofoam in my garage and I want to get rid of it?
The city of Calgary did finally get on board with styrofoam recycling. So the 3 landfill areas in the Calgary area, because styrofoam is something you don't buy a TV every month or something. So it's one of those things that you don't get much of very often. Mm-hmm. And when you do, it's a lot. It's a bigger purchase item. Yeah. And, but it would be the same thing as like when you get paint or fluorescent tubes or these kind of things. So that's why they don't accept it in the blue bin, but it does get accepted at the depot. We are trying to convince some municipalities have worked with us to provide community bins for styrofoam drop-off. Mm-hmm. So there's a few of the municipalities that we work with that they do that. Calgary doesn't so far. So there's about 28 or something community recycle drop-offs and Superstore and Home Depot parking lots. They don't accept styrofoam there. Right now, it's just the 3 landfill locations.
Okay.
And but that's going so far. There's several municipalities around Alberta that have gotten on board with that. But when EPR finally has their phase 3 fully implemented, hopefully styrofoam will be part of that program for all 4 corners of the province. Will have that service.
So you'll be able to go to Home Depot, and where the cardboard bins are, there'll be some kind of styrofoam bin as well.
Right. Yeah, something that we're able to make work. And furthermore, as I said, we can track where it's going, whether it's going offshore and so forth, but we're certainly really pushing. And as the volumes grow, we're getting the attention of some of these companies out there that use recycled resin. And the whole idea is that we are pushing to be able to recycle that here in Canada and certainly Alberta, along with Western Canada area, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. We should be able to recycle that here locally, certainly within the province. And there are some, companies that are now starting to take interest and step up. But again, it's the stumbling block for both them and us is certainly just volume. Mm-hmm. For them to be able to set up a production line and that includes recycled resin, they need to know that you can supply this on an ongoing basis because they have to retool the machinery and all of that. So to be able to do it at scale economically, they need to know that you can supply 75 or 100 tons a month, every month for the next 20 years. Right. And so it's just having that reliable food chain set up to where they will come on board and work with people. And that is coming. That really is coming. Certainly some people have said, oh, styrofoam is going out of fashion and that kind of thing. Fortunately or unfortunately, really, I'd say fortunately, that's not the case. The use of foam as a packing material is growing at about 14% a year. It would seem that Sony and Samsung, some of these manufacturers over in Asia, may have heard some of the negative press about styrofoam plastic, so they've been reducing the amount of styrofoam in their packaging and just replacing it with EPE foam.
Right.
The fact of the matter is we live in a country where you can get these types of packaging made from cardboard where they have like hexagonal chambers and so forth. And it can be pretty strong and effective packaging. But the problem is that here in Canada in the winter, when you get the cold weather, you get condensation, and any kind of cardboard packaging, the moment it gets moisture on it, the structural integrity is compromised.
Yep.
And these companies have experimented with this, and that's why they've stuck with foam. Because also the cardboard doesn't do a lot for thermal insulation.
Right.
Whereas, so that's why during the wintertime, a lot of your produce does get shipped in styrofoam containers because if it's shipped in cardboard and the weather's -30 and the truck is delayed or whatever, if it's in the back of the trailer and it's -30 for a few hours, your fruit's going to die.
Yep.
So a lot of the material does get shipped in styrofoam to ensure quality and freshness and so forth. And I'm happy to report many of the grocery chains here in Calgary Co-op, including their newest location in Cochrane, they recycle all their foam and foam type products in-house. And same with Save On Foods. And so there's a number of grocery stores that we work with, and they absolutely go to great lengths to make sure that everything is recycled.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think that it's a bit of a misnomer that styrofoam is bad because everybody sees it. They don't understand that it can be recycled, and they just see it stuff everywhere flying through the wind and stuck to a fence or whatever. And they're just like, oh, this is so terrible. And they think it's not recyclable, and they think that it's so bad for the environment that it's all ending up in the landfill. But what they don't realize is that it is completely recyclable in like over and over again. But it's the municipality and the provincial and federal governments that aren't making it happen. And it's the people need to stand up and go, no, this is what we want. We want to be able to recycle this stuff because it's the best product for packaging and keeping things colder or warm or whatever. It's a good product.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic product that does very well for what it's made for. And again, the other thing is it's people like they just did away with it. The thing is when they make countertops and cabinetry and these kind of things, it's not like these companies are saying, oh, we have all this styrofoam, what do we do with it? They have the market demand for what they're making. And if they cannot get enough styrofoam, then they use wood. And just good old-fashioned MDF. Where basically they'll take wood from whatever types of trees, turn it into sawdust, and then it becomes basically an MDF type of product. They'd much rather use the styrofoam, but if they can't get enough styrofoam to meet the demand they have, then they supplement it by cutting trees down. So certainly it's a twofold benefit. Not only are you reducing the amount of styrofoam and other plastic that goes into the landfill, but by recycling, you're displacing the cutting down of trees for this manufacturing demand of bookcases and cabinets and these kind of things. So it's a win-win all the way around.
So people listening, you just got to get really focused on collecting your styrofoam and putting it in garbage bags and then bringing it to the dump, to Calgary landfill site. And then it can be recycled properly and turned into something important and valuable instead of being stuck in the landfill.
Absolutely. And now that we are coast to coast, we've had people reach out to us from Sault Ste. Marie and various other places all across Canada, Prince George, various other places. If you don't know where to go for your styrofoam recycling or other plastic recycling, send us an email either through Facebook or Twitter or right at our webpage, styroventures.com. Reach out to us. We're very well connected to all the different municipal players and industry players across Canada. And since we're operating, as far as Montreal and soon to be in the Maritimes, we're connected to all the different recycling options across Canada. And if there isn't something nearby, we will certainly try and work with you. Canada will become a recycling mecca. We produce the oil out of the ground, and there's no reason why we can't recycle it as well.
100%. Well, that sounds like a great place to end. Robert, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited and really congratulations to what you've been able to accomplish. And people who are listening, spread the word. Styrofoam can be recycled easily and over again. It's a great product.
Absolutely. Thanks, Hal. It was great to catch up.
Excellent. Likewise. Everybody else, tune in next week for the Leaders, Innovators, and Big Ideas podcast. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed the show. Why not become a podcast host yourself? LIBI is a community podcast, and we would love to have your voice as a host or a guest. Check out show.libi.ca for more information, show notes, and links for every episode.
This episode is brought to you by New Idea Machine, a unique blend of a tech incubator and a software development powerhouse. We're not just building software, we're crafting the next generation of homegrown tech wizards. Got a project in mind or looking to hire fresh talent? Reach out and let's make tech magic happen. Visit newideamachine.com for more info.
Music for the show was created by Tony Del Degan.